meeting the beautiful soul sister Liz Jones. Hello, Liz.
Hey Mel, how you going?
I'm going fantastic. How are you?
I am going fantastic as well. Thank you.
It's a great time to be alive, right?
It is an exciting time to be alive.
Mm. So
It
let's
is.
we're recording this live as part of the White Owl podcast series. So I am Mel Craven, and Liz Jones is also known as Empowering Your Purpose. Oh, well, that's not what you're known as. That's your business, your
Business.
page on Facebook where people can find you. Is that you on Instagram as well?
Yes, and my website
And you,
.com.au.
yes. So in a minute, we're going to get into your story and what you've been up to and your passion and purpose. And Liz, I only met Liz recently when I returned to Launceston, and it's been magical. We met at the House of Prana, and before I knew it, we were running around naked at a Wild Women's Weekend and sitting in a teepee,
Sharing a
uh,
bed in a
sharing a
van.
bed in a van. Yes, so we could say we know each other quite well in a short space of time. So I would like the rest of the world, the globe, to hear about you because you have been on such an incredible transformative journey that's taken you to the other side of the world. So let's begin with your background. I'd like to talk about your professional background because I did put in the blurb that you were a nurse for 35 years. Is that right?
It
Mm-hmm.
is, Mel, yes.
Yeah, do you want to give us, I don't know, your professional resume? Let's begin there.
Okay,
Mm,
so it's correct. I was a nurse for 35 years, various roles, running hospitals and setting up and running a hematology oncology unit. And in the later years, for the last 16, 17 years, an emergency nurse in Queensland, in Brisbane, then on the Gold Coast for the last 16 prior to 2020.
yes. So no longer in nursing.
No, no, I let that,
Okay.
I did my last contracts in 2021 just to, and yeah, let that go.
Yeah, yeah. Like quite a few people around 2020, there
Mm.
was a redirection for quite a few people. Quite a year that was, wasn't it? Yeah. So, do you want to talk through what happened in 2020 and where it took you to? Um, yeah, or you can start with where you are now and go back.
No, we can probably start. I guess for a lot of people, my journey probably started in 2012 and I wasn't really aware of it, but there was a lot of changes, um, big changes in 2015 for me. That did
Mm,
take me an ending of a relationship, a death of another parent, and moving down to the Gold Coast where I transferred down to work down there and began an internal journey. So I sort of went within, not really understanding what I was doing, other than I guess, some shadow aspects of myself were coming up. I was starting to deal with the victimhood of self and some shadow. So I would have thought I had been on a journey. But let me tell you,
mm, mhm.
until 2020 happened, I can just sat back and assured myself that I hadn't really been on a journey. I was just, I guess, preparing, touching, because I couldn't, in my wildest dreams, imagine what was going to take place. So for me, prior, I guess 2019, coming to the end of 2019, I had an awareness, a deep
Mm.
knowing that what was to come was not, uh, I'm getting the words above board, so I'm going to go with that. So above board.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah.
resonate with me. I just knew, and it started in 2020. And, things were unfolding, and I honestly couldn't understand why people didn't have that knowing or feeling. And I guess for many of us in the nursing that did walk away, for me, being science based, I couldn't see how
Mm.
people science based could not see what was playing out was a bit weird, unusual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was received a vision in the emergency department on shift one day in January 2020. Did you want me to share that vision?
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to hear what that was. Mm.
So for me, it came in as a long line of people that I was leading, and it basically was if I was to partake in the rollout of what was to come,
Mm.
it was as similar as me walking, and it had me walking and leading people into the gas chamber. So it was very, very
Yeah.
stark. It was
Oh,
very real,
that gave me
and it
goosebumps.
um,
Mm.
it didn't surprise me. It was one of those things that came across, and I thought, wow, yeah, that makes sense, and I didn't.
Mm. Mm.
Um, I didn't act straight away because I knew I wasn't going to have a jab or do anything. I knew that, but fear got the best of me. It's like, well, if I leave a 35-year career, how do I pay the mortgage? How do I live? I was on my own. I've got three children, even though they were getting, they were growing into their late teens, 20s.
Mm.
I had to move through that. But for me, I wasn't listening, and I had been unhappy probably for 5 years coming into that, but the fear kept me there. So
Yeah.
I wasn't listening, and I guess spirit, source, creator, however you'd like to put it, just said you're not listening. So I was getting sort of arrhythmias, chest pain. I was vomiting. I was crying, vomiting
Mm.
before work, crying after work. I was having
Yeah.
syncope. So I was becoming quite unwell, and it took me to a syncope and quite an event at the end of April before a very close friend that I work with said, how much more do you want to take before you're not listening?
So
So
a
that was
syncope
my,
for the non-medical people is like fainting.
sorry, yes, I do apologize. And just some cardiac, uh, unusual heartbeats. And yeah,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
apologize
So
for that.
your no, don't apologize. So your body was giving you a physical reaction to the vision, and you kind of not well, not paying attention to it, or you didn't
I
feel
was,
you could be there, but you were still trying to be in the emergency department in the hospital. Yeah.
no, not necessarily. I knew
No.
I had to go, but it was like everyone else, it was
Yeah.
the fear of how am I going to live? So I had to really go,
Yeah.
okay. It was the fear. I knew
Mm.
I wasn't partaking. I knew I didn't want to continue,
Mm.
but it's like everything that fear virus that has been planted in
Yes.
humanity for a long time has kept many people stuck.
Mm.
So
And it
I
was
had to also,
scary. Yeah. Oh, well, it was scary on so many fronts, like what to do if we left our paid jobs, because I had a similar experience, and so did my partner as mental health social worker and paramedic. We both walked away. And it was a time when a lot of us had to choose between what we thought was our truth and what was right and what was healthy for ourselves and our families, and our homes, our livelihood, our incomes. So there was fear on that level, as well as fear of what is going on in the world. Yeah.
so I guess for me, I didn't get too caught up in that whole aspect of that because just this knowing, and I can't tell you how I knew it was like you've done this, you've been there, you've been through this before. It's like no idea, but it was just the fear of this 3D living. How do I live?
Okay.
So I finally left. I took some sick leave and then went on to long service leave. But in the beginning of May, I guess I slept for 3 days. And then on the third day, and I should say to people, I'm just a everyday person like you all. Like I don't have special gifts at this time. Like yes, I was knowing, I was tapped into my intuition, which I had never been that tapped in before. I didn't get channelings or anything like that. This was just gut deep knowing and intuition. So on the
Yeah.
third day, I put my feet on the floor out of getting out of bed, and I got this message strong, loud and clear. Now your work begins. I had no idea what
Mm.
that meant, but I was receiving emails from people trying to speak out that were being shut down. My computer was turning on at the middle of the night. I was on Gaia, or there was things that wanting me to listen to. There was a lot of people putting out a lot of things that were shut down. I put the TV on to listen to meditation music. Like Mel, she loves watching the open fire with the crackling. I had the music.
I do love
So
watching an open fire on YouTube.
yes. So
Mm.
that to me, I was putting that on and it was just going on to documentaries. It was going on to information. And a lot of
Mm.
it was on for me, um, my career, what pharmaceuticals were doing, where it was coming from, why it started, how far back. Like this information was flowing thick and strong. So I went through quite a grief period of thinking, oh my God, here I thought I was doing good, but all this information's coming. But I
Mm.
did have to move through that because it wasn't, I was doing good. I was there for a purpose. And I realized I was the light within a system at that time and doing the
Yes.
best I could.
Yeah.
So that
Mm.
went on for a little while. I wasn't partaking. I would go to coffee shops that didn't involve things that were being forced on us. I went out walking. Nothing changed in my world. Um, I
You're
encouraged my
talking about
children.
the mandates and everything and
Yeah, yeah,
masking up and
yeah. And many of the shops around me weren't partaking in that. So I only gave my energy to those people that were also trying to stay up, stand up. I encouraged my
yeah.
children not to as well. That was their journey. I just gave them facts. They looked it up themselves. So I went on like this. I'd gone through um, I was going through my long service leave. In August, I got that I was to have a look at what my outgoings were. Again, received just knowing these words came in. So I sat down and wrote what my upcoming payments would be for August, and it was some ridiculous amount like $8,000. And I'm thinking, how could I not see what I was paying out? I noticed I was paying like 2 lots of water, 3 lots of gas, or whatever in this body corporate thing.
Mm.
So that was a bit of a shock for me. So I just had that, put that to the side. And then in October, I got that I was, beginning of October, to sell my unit. Um, and the next day I just received, go across the road. I wasn't going to use the real estate agent, use that guy. So I walked across the road, told him what I'd received, how much I wanted, which was over and above what was happening. I didn't want to put it
Mm-hmm.
on the market. I didn't want open hounds. If he had anyone on his books, long story short, 2 days later, the place was sold for the exact amount of money that I wanted and it was done. So I was guided
Okay,
to do a
so
few things.
can I just ask, so where were you? What part of Australia?
I was on the Gold Coast at that
Gold
time.
Coast.
So,
Oh, that's
yeah,
right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
yep.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I was in, a body corporate unit. Probably many people know Emerald Lakes in the Italian sector
Mm.
because I'd been
Mm-hmm.
previously to Italy and wanted to stay there. So I got my
Oh, I
piece
didn't
of
know there
Italy
was an
there.
Italian sector.
There is.
Okay.
There's a French province across the road to it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so I sort
Okay,
of
so you
followed that.
sold.
Yep, so I
Mm-hmm.
sold that and
Mm.
I guess Spirit was trying to, it was about detachment, but I didn't fully understand that. So, long story short, towards the end of October, I got caught up in a scam, and it was a very elaborate run scam. In fact, it was coming out of Europe, and whatever you call it, the big that I had to contact over there were unable to shut it down. But I lost something like $26,000, which wasn't probably a lot of
What?
money to a lot
That
of
is a lot
people.
of money. That's a lot of
It was a
money
lot
to
of money
me.
to me after I'd walked away from work. I didn't have a lot.
Yes.
But again, it was about, I guess, letting go. But then I went back into that fear and go, oh my God, how am I going to live? I've just lost the savings that I've had. So I went and
Mm.
did a couple of contracts. I thought if I'm going to work well, I'll go and see Australia. But again, I'd go to a place and it seemed like I was there for a purpose, and then that was over. I only did 2 stints when I realized it doesn't matter how many times I reinvent the wheel, it's the same, same, same. So then I
Mm.
left, and yeah, long story short, I ended up knowing that I was going to Mexico. Didn't know why, didn't know how, just knew that I was going, didn't question it,
Okay.
absolutely felt
So how
right.
did that happen? How did you get the message you're going to Mexico?
Um, I don't really know. In 2021, I received in July, I was to do, I'm going to say, I'm not sure the legalities here. So I was guided that I needed to do 5 plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
ceremonies, which I
Mm-hmm.
did and was very heavy going for me. It was more about collective, ancestral, and karmic. It was no fun flying saucers up there. It was down
Mm.
there. So I sort of came out of that, and there was a lot of look. You'd read my blog. There was some absolutely amazing things. You know, this snake for transformation that wouldn't leave the house. There was lots of things that happened.
Mm.
So I came through that on the last one with Mother Mary very much in front of me, with just pouring this love and love through. So I'd opened up
Mm.
significantly, but I just knew that I just had a knowing I was to go to Mexico. And I received that at the end around October, November 2021. So I'd started renting at this stage, knew I needed to go to Mount Tambourine to rent, was guided up there, guided to the place. It didn't happen quite that easily, but it did on the second time, next door to the place that I missed out on, knowing that it was
Mm.
like sliding doors. It was just a platform for me to move on. So on a yin training in April, I was to leave Australia by the end of June, and I was to sell everything. I asked, could I put it in
Okay.
storage? And they said, no, you sell everything you own. You go with a suitcase and whatever. So I did. I came back. I told my kids I was going to Mexico. Didn't know where at that stage, just knew I was going, didn't know how to speak the language. So yeah, it was again this deep knowing. I didn't question it. It just felt right. It's like, yep, that's
Mm.
exactly where I need to be. Yep,
Yeah.
but it didn't go that smoothly. There was a hiccup. There was a few things, but I can only look at it and go, well, I wasn't meant to be on that flight. I was still, just remember it was a lot of mandates. You couldn't fly
Yeah. It
domestically
was
in
hard to
Australia.
fly anywhere. Mm.
So I was given some information from a friend who had gone to Mexico, who to fly with, the exact route, how to go. It was the only way I could leave and go. So did all that, but still hit
Mm.
some hurdles leaving Australia domestically, even though I shouldn't have, but I did.
So you didn't
Um,
have the jab that
no,
you needed, but you were still
no,
able
that's why I left.
to
Yeah, that's why I
fly.
left nursing.
Mm, mm.
And I didn't
Okay.
fabricate it. I could have
Mm,
fabricated, but I just trusted that I was going to be looked after. So I know that there was ways to do that, but I didn't. Um,
mm,
so I just knew I was going to be looked after, and I was, but it was the most stressful thing. All I wanted to do was get my feet on the ground once I got
mm.
there. It was horrible. It was like going through just, armed forces, everything shut down,
Yeah, we
people in
flew
these
during that
masks
time.
spraying.
Yeah. It
It
was
was
like
horrible.
military rule of the world, wasn't it? It was a
It
real,
was.
oppressive feeling in any airport. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm,
it was just really cementing the fear of God in all of us. Like, so it
mm,
really wanted us to stay down, stay small, stay locked down. Like, it was just
yeah.
this fear. And I could imagine, like, I was nervous, but I also trusted. But I could imagine how difficult that would have been for anyone. And I've got to say, looking back, I must have had ISIS wrapped around me or something, because the strength and the courage I have when I look back, and it was only when I got back to
Mm,
Australia at the enormity of what I'd done that I went,
yes.
wow.
Yeah.
So
So you had this message to go when you're doing your yin yoga teacher training,
when to go,
was it?
yes. It was, yes,
Yes,
I was
yeah.
doing my yin, yeah, absolute date that I needed to leave by the end of June. Because
Mm,
I think that
okay.
was a window as well of what was to come after that as well.
Mm,
That was going to
mm.
be more difficult. Yeah.
And then, so what year was this? 2021? or 20,
That was 2022 then. So
22?
May 2022, end of May, I left. I didn't know where I was going, so I was just Googling to see where you'd go, and a couple of places came up.
Mexico. Do, 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 do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, where? And
Yeah.
then a couple of people came and just I crossed paths with, and they mentioned Oaxaca. And for me, it's just like if something's mentioned two or three times, I'm being shown. So I went to
It's a
Oaxaca.
sign.
I found a beautiful B&B, which I was just going to stay for a short term. She had two children. She had rooms there. It was a beautiful unit. I had the best unit upstairs. I mean, you couldn't have picked it. Like, I can't make this stuff up. She was awake. She didn't have them. She wasn't caught up in it. She ate clean food. I mean, wow. I'm in Mexico and I
Mm,
found this. Like, so I ended up staying there for 10 months with her.
10
Mm.
months. So you went
Yeah.
and found someone who was aligned with your values in the middle of Mexico in
Uh, uh,
Oaxaca. How do you say it? Oaxaca?
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca.
Yeah, so I
Mm,
started, I guess for people that listen to this or listen to you would understand the terminology of the dark night of the soul, or I
mm,
much prefer it as Edward Casey says, as the hero's journey,
yeah.
because it really is a massive, yeah, it's dark, but
Mm,
I tell you what, it takes a hero to do it. And that's not ego. I'm just saying I can understand why people don't do it. It was incredibly tough.
yeah, yeah.
So I really had to dismantle so many things, and I was put in so many situations where I had to just go in and go in and go in. But I had a bit of fun there. Mexico, despite what the media has said, how dangerous it is. It's a very family orientated. It has festival every second day. They like their mezcal and their kids and color and dancing and music, and it was just quite an
Mm,
incredible, even though they were doing their own journey, because it was
yeah.
close to the US, so they were also in a bit of fear as well. So, but
But they were still gathering and
they
having
were
these
still gathering.
celebrations.
Yeah, it
Mm.
wasn't. They did things differently. They were still putting the fear in them, but you could get, say, ivermectin. I believe in the what do you call them in the airport? You put the money in and then it comes out.
Hang on. That was banned as being a dangerous drug, and you could get it through a machine at the airport.
In Mexico, yeah, yeah,
Isn't
yeah.
that real? That's just so interesting. Yeah.
It is, but
Mm.
then I was quite surprised to get there to find that they were in masks, that they were still pushing the vaccination, for very young children and stuff. So there was quite a bit of US influence there, but there
Mm.
was also, it wasn't mandated, there was a choice, but it
It
still
was
was a little bit
choice.
difficult.
Yeah.
And, I didn't go into many of the places that were still tempting me. You had to have a mask, you had to, I just wouldn't play into that. So I didn't do that.
Mm.
So I stayed there
Mm.
for 10 months, and in January of 2023,
3.
while I was sitting in my little unit up the top, that I was in a comfort zone. And I think the words were, they showed me I was in a holding pattern and that I wasn't going to advance any
Mm.
further until I got out of my comfort zone. So my
Okay. So,
words,
yeah. I was going
yeah.
to say, what were you doing for the 10 months in your comfort zone? What were you doing while you were there?
Going through my dark night of the soul, there was nothing comfortable about it. I was in a country that I didn't speak the language. I was being
Mm.
pushed. I met some beautiful people that I was learning Espanol with Carlos and his auntie who never spoke English, and we just became so close. We were using Google
Mm.
Translate to talk, and some of the things that translated weren't quite polite, and we just laughed and laughed. We danced, we had a
Oh,
great time. So there was moments of that, but for me it was still a journey because I was away from my
mm.
kids. I didn't have a lot of
Yeah.
money. I was still had no idea what was going on and why I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they said this comfort zone, and obviously I spoke out and said, "What do you mean? I'm on the other side of the world. I don't have much money. I'm not working, and I don't speak the language." And they said,
I'm
"Yep,
not comfortable.
not comfortable," but they said you're comfortable in the discomfort.
Mm.
So again, I then gave notice, didn't know where I was going, met a friend, a girl, an acquaintance who was going back to California and said, did I want to go into the city town and rent her apartment at a reduced cost for 6 weeks while she was away. So in that time, I came across somebody that had put something up that was clearly for me to do a plant deity from a
Mm-hmm.
shaman, which is they choose a plant for you and it's like a purging, but it takes you,
Okay.
opens you and takes you. It was 6 days. You couldn't make eye contact. You couldn't talk in that time. It was one meal late in the afternoon. So it was done by tobacco smoke and this plant that you drank. And so I did that. And after that, I got some clarity that I was to go to Guatemala, to Lake
Mm.
Atitlan.
Okay.
Um,
So you did this plant medicine 6 day ritual ceremony, which then opened up the path of where to go next.
yes, yeah. Yep. So I got a few words there and a few people, and then I didn't know where I was going again in Lake Atitlan, and I was guided up to there was another festival. Yeah, go figure. Every second day there was a festival. It was great,
Sounds good.
and they make a lot of they make all their own a lot of crafts and things. And what's the wooden things? I can't remember the name of it. They're known for it in
Wooden things.
Mexico. Um, I just can't think of the name of it at the moment.
What do
But
you do
I
with the
was
wooden things?
Well, they make it. It's all handmade out of wooden things. There's a name for it. I just can't think of it at the time. I
Like
might post it
curios,
later.
like souvenir type things.
They are, but they're known for it, and they're just they're beautifully designed and everything else. But then there's other ones. But I was guided to this stand, and I had to buy a hummingbird, and I thought it
Oh,
was for a friend's gift. But when I got back and
yeah.
I was wrapping her present, it was no, this is for
Mm.
you. This is where you're going. So I Googled hummingbird and I put in Lake Atitlan hummingbird and it came up Sununa. So Sununa is known as the place of the hummingbird.
Wow. Can I ask, Liz, when you're getting these messages, who are you getting them from? Because people will be like, does she have an alter ego? Is she connecting to a spirit guide? Is it source? Is it an ancestor? How do you explain it?
I
God?
don't, I don't. Where I am now, I have a greater understanding that it was probably my soul, which
Mm,
is your higher self, which is
yeah.
connected to all that is, because we're just
Mm,
a fragment of many
mm,
fragments of us that are in many lives. Um, it could have been a spirit guide, it could have been my guardian angel. I don't know. I was just receiving words and I just had
mm,
this intuition, this knowing,
yeah.
just this knowing. I
Yeah.
can't explain it. As I said, I wasn't
Mm,
channeling. It's not like I channel like people can see or they're connected to spirit or which I clearly am, but I've done it my
yes.
way. Like my
Mm,
understanding is I'm feet on the ground and I had to clear myself up. I had to do
mm,
the yards. I chose to
mm.
come back to do the internal work. Um,
So it's like a
so
strong knowing, yeah, which you now kind of identify as your soul, your higher self. Yep.
yeah, or perhaps, and I know that, as I said, Mother Mary was with me for quite a while. I have
Mm,
Archangel Michael that people see
yep.
him sitting on my right shoulder.
Mm,
Um, so I am being pushed more. So my understanding was I didn't question it at the time. It was just a knowing and just a knowing, and it was just these
mm,
words. Like I had the sentence,
mm,
like they were just there, and it's like you saying to me, "Are you going to Mexico?" And I go, "Yeah, okay, great." Or you're now going to Sununa, go and buy this. Yep, okay, no problem.
mm,
Didn't question, and that was the beauty of it.
yeah.
I didn't question, so I was being present, which is what I was learning, being present and letting go of the
Mm,
fear and where else to put you that you had to move through that other than the other side of the world going through the dark night of the soul all by yourself. So I had no distraction.
yeah. Mm,
And I had to move through it myself. I didn't know anyone that was going through this. Coming from a medical background, which many of the people listening to this that are nurses that walked away would understand that that was your friendships there. So I was very much alone. I hadn't forged the spiritual community that I have now. Forged, I didn't. It was very
Yeah.
lonely. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't understand a lot of it. I journaled, I tapped
Mm,
in. When I
mm,
was aligned, I had more understanding, but when I stepped into fear and my God, what am I doing? How do I live? It became more
mm.
difficult. But when I was aligned, it flowed. And I just got these
Yeah.
messages, thoughts,
Mm,
people coming up. You'd hear a word or something once, two, three times. I'd learned synchronicities. You
yeah.
take note of synchronicities, they're everywhere around us.
Mm, mhm.
Yeah, so I ended up finding a place in Sununa, thinking I was going for 6 months for a rest. And the shock of my life when it was mm, the most difficult part of my journey. And
Mm,
I've got to say, I found it really hard to stay here. Oh, well, I had throughout this journey, but this time I found it incredibly difficult to stay here.
to
I
stay,
understand
yeah,
in
as in
alive.
feeling like you might want to leave Earth, like
Yeah.
suicidal ideation. Is that what we're
Yeah.
talking about?
Not so
Yeah.
much suicidal.
Right.
It was more like I what just wanted to go home. There was this strong sense of I've never felt like I've belonged in on Earth. So it was this strong
Yeah.
sense of you. Why aren't you coming to get me? Like I don't want to. Like I don't
It's
fit.
like, beam me up. I've had enough.
Yeah, beam me up,
I'm,
Scotty. And I
I'm
found
making
it
light
really.
of it, but it was a very strong feeling of I've had enough of this being
Yeah.
on Earth. Yeah. Mm, mm,
So for me, going to Sununa, I understand that it was very karmic. So I could
mm,
feel the Mayan unrest, and it was coming into an election. There was a certain part where I was staying that I could feel the dark energy permeating that was actually
mm.
engulfing me.
Yeah.
So it was really horrible. It was really dark for me. I didn't fully understand it at that time. I just knew that I was really struggling to keep my head up now. And I reached out to somebody that's quite well known, and you would probably know that was in Australia, that I had met an acquaintance, but I had done a few things with him. And I said, look, is there any chance you could give me a reading? Your name came up. I was invited to reach out to you. He actually said, I will call you. And he did. And he did a reading for an hour and spoke to me. And
Mm,
I got a lot of clarity.
okay.
And after that call in Sununa, sitting in this place after I'd moved, I had moved residences at this stage. I just basically said, I surrender. I fully surrendered,
Mm.
absolutely surrendered with tears in my eyes and just said, I'm surrendering, I'm stepping back. And at that point, I'd let go of all control and everything. And all I got was what I felt like was this big booming voice was, it's about time. And then I went to bed and slept all night and woke up the next morning and got that I was going back to Australia. And I just said, and I thought I was going to the UK. I was having feelings of that.
Mm.
And I said, why would I be going back to Australia? I was told to sell everything. Like, yep.
I've got nothing there. Mm.
And I got that it was about detachment. And then I got, again, I was going back to Tassie. And I just felt that's exactly where I'd be going to. I didn't even question. I thought, oh my God, that is so European and English. But I was born here. I left in the 60s. I'd come back. So it was like for me, they just showed me one cycle had completed. I'd done what I came here to do. And I was to come down to Tasmania and start another chapter. And
Okay. So you're
so that's where I'm at now.
Tasmanian born. Tasmanian born. You've come back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I just ask, the 6 months in Sununa, what were you
I didn't
doing
last
there?
6 months there. I only
Okay.
lasted, I lasted about 3.5. Just, it was very
Okay. It was so
difficult.
heavy
Yeah.
and dark, and
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that
But I
because you
had to
say
break,
that
I
was on
broke
an,
through.
yeah, so that was on an energetic level, and
Yeah.
physically what was going on? Did you say there were elections and things happening, or?
Yeah, so it's a different culture.
Mm,
And they also, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. We can look at our own door and we can look at entitlement, or we can look at, oh, they're poor, or they're this, or they're that. But everything's the same. It doesn't matter where
Mm,
you go. There's still this entitlement. There's this sense of victimhood. There's this sense of you owe me, and they try to take advantage of you. And if
mm,
like, so it's a lot of things are the same. There's still stealings and rubber and all of that. So a lot of that was going on, and there was a lot of unrest.
okay.
So in theirs, they had
Yeah.
been separated. So they have all these villages all
Mm,
around the lake, which was created by a volcano many, many years ago, which was probably part
mm,
of um, Mu in Hawaii. Um,
yeah.
and they had all, so all the Mayans villages all had a different dialect. So none of them were really connected. So it was this disconnection amongst themselves. So this disconnection was playing out there as well. Then the election, which
Okay.
was no different, it was all fraught with exactly the same things as what we're seeing played out, paid
Okay.
out,
Yeah.
saying the same word, all of it. It was just like, and that's where I realized it's just the same, but different. It's happening
Yep.
everywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it. It's no different wherever you go. It's just a
Mm,
different culture, a different place, but it's still the underlying
mm.
same theme.
So
Control,
you
fear, ego,
control and fear.
materialism.
Yep. Yep. Yes. So then when you surrendered, you were told, okay, go to Tassie. And then what? Then what happened?
Um, yeah, so I came down here again. I hadn't worked. So I hadn't worked since, I hadn't had an income since 2020. And I just thought, well, that's just crazy. How am I going to get a rental? Now, everybody in the rental market knows that that doesn't happen without a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it out there, and I was just guided to realestate.com. Eventually, when I woke up one morning, and a place in George Street came about. And so I put in an application the best I could. And the agent rang and she said, we've got your application. She said, you need to send me some paychecks. And I said, oh, I don't have any. And she said, I said, I've got, I'm starting a business. Well, how much is your money, you earn? I go, well, I'm just starting out. And I said,
Yep.
you're just going to have to look out of the box. I said, I'm not one of those 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. I just don't have a pay slip. And she said, well, I'd hate to tell you, but she said, the chances of you getting a place is really minimal. And I said, well, that's all right. But she said, I will put your application in. I said, that's nice. Thank you. So she rang me back the next day to say that my application had been accepted. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a big rental, but I knew I had to be there. So I booked on the
Oh,
boat,
your
came
application
over.
was accepted the next day. Did you just
Yeah,
say?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Even though you had no paycheck. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Absolutely
Yep.
not.
Mm.
So that was accepted. And so I ended up booking, and I was coming down here on the 4th of September. So I spent August back in Australia with my kids and just catching up with friends for a month before I headed down to Tasmania. They were happy I was home. That was a little bit closer for them to come and visit. So interesting enough, so the time I came down here, it hasn't been an easy time. I still had a lot of toxic people moving away from me. As anybody that does this, as you move on, people drop off, and there was still
Yeah.
things going on. But where I landed was in George Street. So I was 4 places up, and Mel can appreciate this story, but I was 4 houses up from the House of Prana. So for
Yeah.
me, everything for me in that time came out of the House of Prana. So I walked past there and just went up there, and I saw a lady's name that I was drawn to, and I got that I needed to email her, which I did, and said, made this connection into the spiritual world, and ended up meeting more people within the first week I was here. It was absolutely crazy. Then they offer a $50 intro for a month at House of
It's
Prana.
so
Great
good.
value.
Let's put a
Great
plug in
value.
for House of Prana, which is a
Yes.
yoga studio and a float.
And oh, absolutely,
Mm.
and lots of things. You can work out of there,
Mm.
do workshops, you can do many things. But so I did this, and I got to know one of the girls there who taught Bikram. I didn't know she was friends with Jackie and all of that. And we both said, oh, oh, we did this yin training and we've never done it. So we got together
Never
one
taught
day,
it.
never taught it. So we got together and she goes, well, do you want to go first? So I go, yeah, not knowing that she was whatever. Anyway, so I taught it, and next minute Jackie's walked into the room and Shelley goes, well, this girl doesn't need to practice anything. You need to put her on there and hire her and put her on the books. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, I've not done this before. So anyway, long story short, I ended up
Mm.
receiving from spirit that I would be supported if I took every opportunity while I was in Tasmania, walked through the doors, and I learned it as I went. So I had to
Mm.
still go through all the self-worth, the self-love, the fraud, all of that's pushed me and pushed me. But in that time, I started teaching in yoga. I put my hand up, started teaching slow vinyasa. I then started teaching vinyasa. I then started playing my sound bowls, which I hold sound bars. It has just been incredible. So it's only 10, what are we in? I arrived in September last year. We're in November now, I'd say October.
Mm.
I was still going through a bit of dark night, a bit of really deep searching, and I feel like I've only just now got onto the edge of that and I'm breaking through
What a
that. And there's a lot of
journey.
stuff happening.
Mm. So just to clarify, you are a registered yoga teacher, but you
Yes, I
hadn't been
am.
using it.
And I
Yeah.
had taught a little bit
Mm.
prior to going to
Mm.
Mexico, but I hadn't
Mm.
really, that was just with friends in
Mm.
the park and doing things. So
Yeah.
I had practiced it. I've always been passionate about it. So no, yeah, I
Mm.
just didn't jump up and go, oh yeah, just put me up there. No, I was
Yeah.
just being pushed to use the skills that I had that I
Mm.
hadn't because I didn't think I was
Mm.
good enough. I was
And
older, didn't have the experience to blah blah.
oh, imposter syndrome. And
Imposter
I
syndrome.
have to say, that's where I met you, came along to your beautiful crystal bowl sound bath where we get to float in silk hammocks. I was like, who is this goddess?
Oh, you're funny.
um, no, seriously, it's such a powerful experience. Just the crystal sound bowls and the way you play them. I always go on a real journey and feel completely relaxed and bliss afterwards. Yeah, so yeah, that's where I met you. So yes, I'm just like that. I don't think I've heard every step of your story before, and it is epic. It's an epic hero's journey. And now here you are inspiring others. So empowering your purpose. Tell me how you got that name and what you are. What do you feel your, can you say, mission here is on earth, or your, what are you doing at the moment? How did you come up with this present moment business and everything you're doing?
Well, I think, my understanding, we always ask, what's my, what am I here for or whatever. So my understanding is that, our purpose is to remember who we are
Mm,
ultimately and nothing else, to reconnect to our soul, to find love of self and do that. So, my journey has been from, narcissistic abuse relationships, absolute control, breaking free of that, the bullying, the self-hatred and all of
mm,
that. So I started, um, so empowering your purpose was really came about in my own journey to continue empowering myself. Um, because, I always use Ram Dass's thing that we're all walking each other home. I may
mm,
be a step ahead of the person that comes for me to help, but that's because I need to be a step ahead so I can help you get to the next step. And then I take the next step. So my purpose at this moment, and it changes, as you know, it changes because we are transforming daily and the
mm.
goalposts are changing daily. But at the moment, I am inspiring people to find their integrity, to find their self love, and to find their voice, and their voice,
Mm.
you know, their authenticity, to be heard and remember who they are, do it for, just return to the internal. So I'm helping people move through that narcissistic abuse. So my counseling business is narcissistic abuse to awakening. So with that,
Oh.
I also do energy healing. I
Mhm.
bring the crystal bowls in. I do a lot of chakra work, a lot of breath work now. I bring the yoga into it for the movement. There is so many aspects. I'm outspoken about helping um, people clean up after the jab, getting the heavy metals out because people are sick.
Mm.
People are sick
Yes.
and they are leaving. So I,
Mm.
I am helping people to do a heavy metal detox and then just to take their power back to putting what's clean in their body and not what they've been told to do. So I guess there's a lot of things I'm doing at the moment. So I just feel like I'm empowering people and empowering myself, but ultimately to come back to love of self and to be heard, to have a voice, to
Mm.
remember who you are and just be authentic and not be afraid of being authentic.
Yes. So you are such a beacon of light because so many people are still really scared to come out and be their authentic selves. I think the last 4 years there's been a real concerted effort by authority to squash, to quieten, to censor people that have wanted to question or thought that perhaps there's a different way. So, where do you get your courage from? What can you say to people who are sitting there going, "Oh, I wish I was as brave as Liz. I really would like to speak my own truth." What advice could you give them?
Gosh, as I said, for me, it was that sense of knowing. But for now, because I have uh, that sense of knowing, which has given me that awareness, and I'm thinking that if anyone's listening to this, they're listening to it because they are beginning to question.
Mm,
So just begin to question everything, because that
yeah.
is the only way that we could begin to step back into our power that we've given away. And especially for the feminine, and I'm talking about that as the male because the male has the feminine aspect as well.
Mm,
We need to be heard. We need to come back to our authenticity. We need to know that we're worthy. We have value on ourselves and things like that. And I've absolutely forgot the question that you've asked me. And don't you love this being live?
well, you're answering it. You're answering it, Liz. I said, what advice would you give to people who want to speak their truth but are still fearful? And you were saying it's about your self worth and about coming back to be in the present, I think you said, listening, and questioning, just being curious, starting to question. Yeah, allowing
Yeah,
the
I
process
mean,
to unfold. Mm.
and just have, if you are present and you just look around and you really begin to question and you just really sit there and you think, how is it that I get to be told what I eat, how to go to work, what I earn, what I say? Like all these things, like now just seem so ridiculous that we work all our life, Monday to Friday, paying more taxes, giving more taxes, everything going up, and it's just this wheel, the hamster wheel that you keep going around. And yeah, maybe I'm a bit further on the track, but at some point I really just sat back and I just thought, this is ridiculous. Would I
Mm.
really choose to come back to just give my power to someone else and to keep working and to really take so little of that? That in itself didn't make sense. So start questioning and
Mm.
just going, well, what can I do? What brings me joy? And that's probably one of the hardest things for all of us because we're being so caught up in this doing, and never having time to actually sit down. And that was one of the hardest things. And I don't know about you, find what brings you joy because joy will move you to the next level. it'll
Yes.
bring you, things will start to, but
Mm,
so many, and I know I sit there often and go, what really does bring me joy? Have I really been joyful at any time, like really joyful? And if I have, has it been a handful of times? Or so what brings me? Just start to find that. And then you realize that, do I want to keep doing a dead end job? Do I want to keep doing something that doesn't bring me joy? Just start questioning and tapping into yourself. Does this feel good? If it doesn't feel good, what can I do differently? And just
mm,
move through that fear virus that's been implanted in humanity for so long, and just one step at a time. It doesn't have to be massive.
yeah, because a lot of people are going, well, I can't just walk away from my job and I've got bills to pay. So it takes a whole realignment of what's possible. I know it did for me, and
And
it takes
recreating
faith.
something different.
Mm, mm,
Recreate something different. Okay, I do this job. Is there another way that I can do it with another company, with other people that maybe align more with my values than what I'm giving
mm,
my power away from there? Just for so long, we've had the blinkers on because that's all we've been able to do because we've just been on this thing. But if we just begin to open up a little bit
yes.
and just maybe, could I do that? But that's where
Mm,
the thing comes back. Am I worthy of doing that?
yeah.
Am
And
I
I love what
capable?
you said.
Self-talk.
Does it give me joy? Does it make me feel excited? Because that's what I live by at the moment. If something's making me feel happy and passionate and gives me meaning, then I take that as a green light from the universe. Go, go, go in that direction. And a lot of people, like I heard it put that, we spend 50 to 60 years separated from our loved ones. We're off to work, our children are off in institutions and schools, and in exchange, we get like 15 years perhaps before we die at the end of our life to all be together. It's like, that's bizarre that people spend the majority of their life doing something they don't like away from their loved ones. What type? I remember just thinking that is cruel, and it's not my idea of how we could be living. I mean, we are social creatures. We are into connection and love and communication, and we're often separated and put in, I'd like to say, dark places. Often a lot of people literally not even able to go out in nature because their job requires them to be in a concrete office. So, yes, there has to be a better way, and I know that you are shining the light. You're someone who has shown that you can follow your your truth and you can be authentic, and you definitely walk your talk. If anyone wants to learn how to walk your talk, contact Liz. Yeah, that's why I just really wanted to interview you, because I think you will just give other people that little spark of hope and maybe a little bit of a kick up the bum to be authentic. Yeah. Hmm.
Just keep it simple. If we're not
Hmm.
in fear, fear is controlled. Keep people in
Yeah.
fear and you can be controlled. And that's what we're breaking out of at the moment. So if you can step through that fear and just go, what if? What have you got to lose?
Yeah.
What have you got to lose if you step out of it and just do that what if?
I want to
What if it
ask you,
fails? Well, go
what
back and do it again.
if, what if you turned off the news?
Yeah,
That's what I
absolutely.
did.
Yeah,
Like, I'm talking about the mainstream beamed into our house
yeah.
news, which is a reel of doom and gloom, basically. Mm.
And has a frequency and a negative energy that is drawing you in and taking over you to keep you in that fear that you can't actually get out of that. And I was
Mm.
actually going to say, when you said, what can people do? You know what? Tap in. There is so many podcasts out there. There is so many people
Mm.
that have stepped out of their jobs and they are doing the work. They've put themselves on the front line. There is so many. Soul Podcast, Joe.
You've got another podcast. Is it Two Tarts? What's your
Two
other
Tarts on a
podcast?
Journey. Yeah, but we've been a bit busy. We haven't had any for a few weeks. But
Mm,
yeah, I mean, there's so many people, those sorts of things. If you're in fear, and I do it myself, and I know you do, because we are all human, and there's sometimes that our energy levels do go down because of what we're in. But tap
mm,
into these things because they give you hope. And
yes.
they assure you that there is more light out there. And the more that we do
Mm,
this, the more we have these conversations, the more that you step back into your power and do these little things. You know,
hmm.
treat people with the respect that you want to treat yourself. Do all those things because, what do they say? It's love, integrity, and authenticity are the three biggest things that will raise your
Mm,
consciousness, but also change the energy out there. So but tap into these things because these are the energies that you want to take on, not the social media, not the people that are saying things that are drawing you in, but also, if
hmm.
it doesn't resonate, move on.
Yes. And sorry, and have compassion for people that are on a different part of their journey, I think,
Yeah,
is really important because
yeah,
not everybody will be ready to leave their career of 35 years and travel across the other side of the world. For them, it might be just making that first step of finding a podcast instead of watching the 7 p.m. news. Could be.
absolutely.
And
That's well said.
that's how I started, which is why I wanted to start a podcast. I found a podcast in 2020, which was that little voice which opened me to everything. It all began with, I wish I could remember who it was now, because now I've listened to so many. If I can, I'll give a shout out. But yeah, I just remember it was that voice of this beautiful soul just speaking her truth. And that's what started my, I guess you could call it awakening, or the 2020 awakening. There are other versions along the way. But yes, so it's so important to have compassion and to just, you don't know who's going to listen to this, Les, or if someone just decides to have a conversation with one friend, you don't know how that's going to ripple out. Mm.
And the biggest thing also, is don't be afraid because, we are all lights and we all are coming to that and people will drop off, but it doesn't mean that,
Mm.
it's bad. It just means that we're on different journeys at the moment. And that, if you do start listening to a podcast, it doesn't mean that's the one and only. Like, look at the
Mm.
things that pop up, look at the synchronicities, because it's like a job. We're not in the jobs for 50, 60 years now. So if something presents itself tomorrow, it could be there for 4 days, but it's like, oh, that's
Mm.
all I needed out of that. It's like picking a book up, read a page. That's all I needed to receive, move on. Don't get stuck
Yeah.
in it because, again, you're giving it the control. Just be open
Mm.
and listen to the message and go, oh, that was good. Oh, I don't need. And the next one, just be open and keep yourself open and keep moving forward. Keep
Yeah.
expanding.
I love that. Because fear is a state of contraction and expansion is the opposite. Yeah. And it's love. Mm.
Love. Love is all there is.
And love is a medicine. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so
Doesn't matter how
much.
many times you go around, at the end of it, the same theme is the same. It is
Mm,
love and compassion for self,
mm,
and that exudes
mm.
out and that changes the energy out there. We're creating the
Yes.
reality out there from whatever it is from inside.
Mm. I think that is a perfect place to end.
Yes.
And yes, I want to thank you so much for coming on to share your beautiful journey, your wisdom, your inspiration. And if anybody wants to connect with Liz, you can find her on her website, Empowering Your Purpose. You can find her on
.com.au.
.com.au. You
Yeah.
can find her on Facebook, Empowering Your Purpose,
Yes.
and also at House of Prana in Launceston. Where else can they find you?
Well, I'm like anybody at the moment. I'm on a journey still, and some of those things have been a little bit quiet lately just because we've got to do the work. So I am starting to step out now. But generally, my website, there's a lot of things on there. You can contact me. Um, and, for people that are in Launceston, have just moved here or around in Tasmania, I know Mel, I can speak for her as well, we're open to expanding this spiritual group or just coming together and knowing you're not alone. We can meet for a cuppa and a chat, you
Mm.
know, invite you to some of these groups that are around there,
Yeah. What are
so
you doing tomorrow? In case anyone's listening, is there
me.
is there a soulscape event perhaps happening?
There is. I'm actually collaborating for the first time with Naomi for a soulscape out at Hillwood with some art play and some breath work and a sound bath out in nature, in the
Mm,
fresh air. It is going to be a fine day out with the trees. So, yes,
yeah,
that is what I'm doing tomorrow. So if anyone
beautiful.
wants
So,
to join us, you can get onto my website, empoweringyourpurpose.com.au, and there will be a link that will take you there.
yeah.
Um,
And I'll put a little note in the Facebook chat if anybody's listening to this live and wants to find out more. Yes, okay. Well, thank you
Beautiful.
so much. I will let you go and have some dinner.
That will be lovely, Mel. Thank you. And thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Whoever's listening, just know that you are enough and we can all do this and we're all in it together.
Okay. Thank you so much, love. And I don't have a tagline yet, but Mark suggested we just go hoot hoot.
Hoot,
Life's a
hoot.
hoot. The white owl.
Beautiful. Hoot, hoot.
Okay, hoot hoot. Bye. Love you.
Bye. And you, Mel.